The fire burns low, not with flame that leaps or crackles loudly, but with a patient, steady glow, embers breathing softly into the night. Somewhere beyond the edge of sound, the world sleeps. And here, in this quiet moment, we begin a journey not forward, but backward across centuries, across sand and stone, across a vast desert plateau where the earth itself was once marked with intention. Far from crowded cities, far from the restless motion of the modern age, lies a high desert in southern Peru, a place where the wind moves slowly, where the sky feels larger than it should, and where the ground, when seen from above, reveals messages written not for footsteps, but for the heavens. This is the land of the Nazca Lines. At ground level, they are almost nothing. A faint clearing of stones, a subtle difference in color, a gentle scar across the desert skin. But from the sky, they awaken. Lines stretching farther than the eye can follow, perfect triangles, endless spirals, animals larger than football fields, a hummingbird suspended in motion, a spider frozen in silence, a monkey with a curling tail that seems to dance against the sand. And the question that has lingered for centuries is not simply how they were made. It is why. A desert that remembers everything, the Nazca Plateau is not an ordinary desert. Rain rarely falls here. Clouds pass without offering relief. The air is dry, thin, and still, so still that the land remembers every mark left upon it. The stones scattered across the surface are darkened by centuries of sun and oxidation. Beneath them lies a lighter earth, pale, almost golden. When the stones are moved aside, even gently, the contrast becomes visible. A line appears, and it stays for hundreds of years, for over 1,000. This desert does not forget. And that is what makes the Nazca Lines possible, not just their creation, but their survival. Long before airplanes, long before satellites or maps, an ancient culture discovered that this land could hold a message indefinitely. All it required was patience and purpose. The people before the lines, the Nazca, were not conquerors. They were not empire builders in the way history often remembers power. They were farmers, weavers, potters, observers of water, sky, and seasons. They lived between roughly 100 BCE and 800 CE in a harsh environment where survival depended on understanding cycles. When water would come, when it would vanish, when the earth would offer life, and when it would demand restraint. Their irrigation systems were masterful. Underground aqueducts called puquios carried water across arid land with quiet efficiency. Some still function today. This was a people who watched nature closely, listened carefully, and responded with precision. So when we see precision etched into the desert, we should not be surprised, but we should still wonder. Lines without a viewer, one of the strangest truths about the Nazca Lines is this: they were never meant to be seen from the ground. Walk among them and they disappear. Stand upon a line and it dissolves beneath your feet. Even the largest figures cannot be understood without distance, without height. This raises a question that feels simple, but is anything but. Why create images that no human eye could fully see? The Nazca had no balloons, no mountains tall enough for the view, no written records explaining intent. Yet they laid out designs with mathematical precision, straight lines that remain straight for kilometers, shapes that maintain proportion across vast distances. They created something meant for a viewer above. But who or what was that viewer? Geometry in silence, the lines themselves vary greatly. Some are narrow paths, worn smooth by repeated walking. Others are single, clean strokes cut into the earth, untouched by footsteps. They intersect, overlap, diverge, yet rarely disrupt one another. It is as if each new line respected the ones already there, acknowledging an older order beneath the sand. Trapezoids fan outward like open arms. Spirals coil inward, slow and deliberate. Triangles point with unwavering confidence toward distant horizons. This is not randomness. This is planning. And planning on a scale that required cooperation, generations perhaps working together toward a vision larger than any single lifetime. The animals that never move then there are the figures. A hummingbird, wings extended, balanced perfectly between motion and stillness. A condor, vast and watchful. A spider, carefully proportioned, its legs reaching outward as if feeling the desert air. A monkey, playful, its tail curling into a near-perfect spiral. Each one is distinct, each one deliberate. These were not idle decorations. In Nazca pottery and textiles, animals appear often, symbols of water, fertility, sky, earth. They were not merely creatures, they were ideas, messages perhaps, but messages written not in ink, in landscape. Discovered by accident for centuries, the lines lay quietly beneath the sun. Spanish chroniclers mentioned strange markings, but did not linger. To them, the desert was empty, unimportant. It was not until the 1920s, when airplanes began flying over southern Peru, that the truth emerged. Pilots looked down and saw shapes impossible to understand from the ground. The desert had been speaking all along, but only when humanity finally rose into the air did we begin to listen. And even then, understanding did not come easily. A mystery that refuses to hurry. Some scholars suggested astronomical calendars. Others believed they were ceremonial pathways. Still others thought they marked underground water sources. Each theory brought pieces of understanding, but none completed the picture. Perhaps because the Nazca Lines were never meant to answer a single question. Perhaps they were not instructions, but relationships between earth and sky, between people and seasons, between what is seen and what is sensed. The fire settles lower now. The desert wind moves gently across stone and sand. And somewhere beneath the quiet stars, lines remain patient, precise, and waiting. They do not demand explanation. They invite contemplation. And so, as the echoes of the ancient world softened into the night, the desert kept its secrets, not hidden, but calmly, openly written across the earth for those willing to look slowly and listen. The desert is quiet again. Morning comes slowly to the Nazca Plateau. The sun does not rise in haste here. It appears gradually, lifting the cool blue shadows from the stones, warming the sand grain by grain. As light spreads across the plain, the lines remain invisible from the ground, hidden in plain sight as they always have been. And yet they are there, stretching beyond hills, crossing dry riverbeds, holding their direction with a patience that feels almost deliberate. To understand the Nazca Lines, we must first let go of a modern assumption that complex designs require complex machines. The people who lived here had no metal tools, no wheels, no written mathematics as we know it today. But what they did have was time, observation, and a deep familiarity with the land beneath their feet. The desert itself became their measuring instrument. The ground as a canvas the Nazca did not carve into stone. They did not build upward. They revealed. By removing the dark surface stones, carefully, methodically, they exposed the lighter soil beneath. A line appeared not because something was added, but because something was gently taken away. This process required no force, only consistency. Archaeological studies show that the stones were often placed neatly along the edges of the lines, as if to frame them, not hurriedly discarded, but respectfully moved aside. The act itself seems intentional, almost ceremonial. These were not marks made in frustration or haste. They were acts of quiet precision. Straight lines that refused to bend. Some Nazca lines stretch for more than 15 kilometers, maintaining an almost perfect straightness across uneven terrain. Hills rise, depressions sink. The earth subtly curves, and yet the lines continue unwavering. How? The answer is simpler than it first appears: wooden stakes. Archaeologists have discovered remnants of wooden posts at the ends of some lines, preserved by the dry desert air. When two stakes are placed in the ground, a straight path between them is easy to maintain, even over long distances. Add a rope, add careful alignment, add repetition, and the line emerges. No aerial view required, only patience and trust in geometry. Drawing shapes without seeing them, but straight lines are only the beginning. The figures, the animals, spirals, and geometric forms required something more: planning. Evidence suggests the Nazca used scaled ground drawings, possibly created on smaller plots and then expanded proportionally across the desert floor. By using grids, ropes, and fixed points, shapes could be enlarged without ever needing to see them from above. This technique is not mysterious. It is ancient. Similar methods were used in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and later in medieval cathedral construction. Precision does not belong to any one era, only to those willing to observe carefully. The Nazca were such observers. Walking the lines, one of the most revealing discoveries came not from the sky, but from footprints. Many lines show signs of repeated walking. The soil is compacted. The stones pushed aside are smoothed. These were not one-time drawings. They were paths. Ceremonial paths, perhaps, walked slowly, deliberately, in rhythm with chants, offerings, or seasonal rites. The act of walking the line may have been as important as the line itself. Movement created meaning. The desert became a place not just to look upon, but to participate in. Geometry as language, the geometric forms, trapezoids, triangles, spirals, appear again and again across the plateau. Trapezoids widen toward the horizon, as if opening themselves outward. Triangles point toward distant mountains or celestial rising points. Spirals turn inward, gently, endlessly. These shapes are not random. Geometry has always been a language, a way to express balance, direction, and transformation. For a culture without writing, geometry may have been a form of memory, a way to encode understanding directly into the land. Lines that follow, the water was life for the Nazca, and many lines align with underground aquifers, seasonal rivers, and mountain runoff paths. From the ground, these connections are subtle. From long-term observation, they become clear. The lines may have served as markers, not literal maps, but symbolic acknowledgments of the invisible systems sustaining life beneath the desert. To walk a line may have been to honor the water beneath one's feet. To trace a spiral may have been to recognize cycles, drought and rain, scarcity and return. Precision without urgency, what stands out most is not how quickly the Nazca worked, but how slowly. There is no evidence of urgency in the lines, no crowding, no overwriting. New designs respected older ones, avoiding disruption. This suggests a long-term vision, perhaps spanning generations. A grandfather placing a stake, a parent clearing stones, a child walking the path decades later. The lines were not meant to be finished. They were meant to continue, seen by the sky, felt by the earth. Even if no human could see the full designs from above, something else could. The sun, the moon, the stars, from dawn to dusk, shadows move across the lines. Light traces their shapes slowly, patiently. At certain times of year, the rising sun aligns with specific pathways. The desert becomes a calendar not written but walked. The Nazca may not have needed to see the images fully. They may have trusted that the sky could. The day warms now. Heat shimmers softly above the ground. The lines remain quiet, doing what they have always done, existing without explanation. They do not ask to be solved. They ask to be considered. And so, as the desert breathes beneath the widening sky, the lines stretch onward, precise, patient, and unbroken, carrying knowledge not shouted but whispered into the slow passage of time. As evening returns to the desert, the light softens. The sun lowers itself gently behind distant ridges, and the Nazca Plateau cools once more. Shadows stretch. Colors fade into quiet tones of gold and ash. The lines lie still, resting beneath the open sky, but the figures remain waiting. They are not hidden. They are not erased. They are simply patient. To walk among them is to feel their absence. To rise above them, even in imagination, is to feel their presence. These beings etched into the desert are more than images. They are ideas shaped into form, symbols that speak without words. To understand the Nazca Lines, we must listen to the animals. A world where nature was meaning for the Nazca people, animals were not separate from life. They were reflections of it. The desert taught restraint. The rivers taught gratitude. The sky taught rhythm. Every creature carried a lesson. Every movement held significance. The Nazca did not draw animals because they were beautiful. They drew them because they mattered. Pottery fragments reveal this clearly. Birds, fish, insects, and mammals appear again and again, woven into daily life. The lines in the desert were not an artistic departure. They were an expansion. The land itself became the final canvas. The hummingbird, messenger of renewal, one of the most recognized figures, is the hummingbird. Its wings are spread wide. Its beak extends forward. Its form is balanced with extraordinary care. The hummingbird was a symbol of energy and renewal across many Andean cultures. Though small, it travels great distances. Though delicate, it endures. Most importantly, it is drawn to water. In a land where water meant survival, the hummingbird became a messenger. Between flowers, between seasons, between scarcity and abundance. Placed upon the desert floor, its image may have served as an offering, a quiet request sent upward, asking the sky to remember the earth below. The condor, guardian of the heights, larger than the hummingbird, broader in presence. The condor stretches its wings across the plateau. Condors soar higher than most birds, riding thermal currents without effort. They see far, they observe patiently. To the Nazca, the condor may have represented the upper world, the realm of the sky, the sun, and cosmic order. A watcher, a bridge between ground and heavens. Its presence among the lines suggests reverence rather than fear. The condor was not a predator in myth, it was a guide, one who moves without urgency. The monkey, curiosity and continuity, perhaps the most intriguing of all, is the monkey. Its body is simple, almost playful. But its tail curls into a near-perfect spiral, a shape that appears nowhere else in the animal figures. The monkey was not native to the Nazca region. It lived in distant jungles beyond the desert and mountains. Its inclusion speaks of connection, trade routes, shared myths, long-distance awareness. The spiral tail may symbolize continuity, cycles, the unbroken movement of time. The monkey is not walking forward or backward. It exists within the loop. The spider, a quiet architect of balance, smaller, more subtle. The spider stretches its legs carefully across the desert surface. In many ancient cultures, spiders represented creation, weaving, patience, and the delicate balance of life. Their webs are fragile yet precise. The Nazca spider appears almost understated, as if meant to be discovered slowly. Some scholars note that its form aligns with seasonal rain cycles and the appearance of certain spiders that emerge just before rainfall. If true, this image may have been a quiet prayer, a marker of hope etched into the land itself. The whale and the sea beyond the desert, far from the coast, the whale-like figure raises questions. Why draw a sea creature in the heart of the desert? The answer lies in Nazca cosmology. The ocean was not distant, it was connected. Rivers flowed from mountains to sea. Clouds rose from ocean waters and returned as rain. The whale may have represented abundance, depth, or the unknown forces that sustain life beyond immediate sight. The desert remembered the sea. Birds in motionless flight, many birds appear among the lines, pelicans, herons, parrots. Birds cross boundaries effortlessly. They move between water and land, earth and sky. To draw them upon the ground may have been an act of alignment, inviting movement where stillness reigned, and acknowledging freedom where survival required discipline. Their wings never beat. And yet they are always in flight. Why animals, not humans? One absence stands out. There are almost no human figures among the Nazca Lines. This may be intentional. Animals represent forces larger than individuals, cycles that outlast a single life. To draw animals was to draw principles, not personalities. The Nazca did not place themselves at the center of the world. They placed themselves within it. Symbols meant to be seen slowly, the animals are not dramatic. They do not demand attention. Their power lies in proportion, in placement, in restraint. Each one occupies space without overwhelming it, as if acknowledging the desert's quiet authority. Seen together, they form not a story with a beginning and end, but a collection of relationships, water and sky, earth and movement, stillness and continuity. Night approaches again. The stars emerge one by one unhurried. The desert cools. The animals remain drawn, fixed, eternal, yet somehow alive in meaning. They do not roar, they do not chase, they wait. And so, as the shapes of ancient beings settled gently beneath the watching sky, the messages they carried remained unspoken, resting in silence, written in earth, and carried forward by the quiet patience of time. Night settles slowly over the desert. The wind quiets. Stars appear one by one, gently and without rush, as though they, too, are listening for something ancient and still unspoken. The Nazca Lines lie beneath this vast celestial dome, silent from the ground, but alive in their connection to the rhythms above. We step now into a place where land and sky meet, not through dramatic revelation, but through quiet, unhurried alignment. The sky as a calendar long before clocks and charts, ancient cultures measured time through the sky. They watched the sun rise and set. They followed the moon through its phases. They noted the movement of stars as seasons shifted. To the Nazca people, the heavens were not distant. They were markers, guides to water, to survival, to planting and harvest. In the endless desert where rain was rare and life fragile, the sky could not be ignored. Astronomers and archaeologists have noted that some Nazca lines align with the rising and setting points of celestial bodies at certain times of the year. These alignments are not exact like modern instruments would demand, but they are deliberate, consistent, and patient. These are not abrupt signals. They are slow conversations between earth and sky. Sunrise and the long lines imagine standing at the edge of a long Nazca line as dawn approaches. The earth is cool. The horizon glows faintly. Slowly, the first thread of sunlight emerges. It touches the land, first gently, then with increasing warmth. As the sun rises, its rays trace angles across the lines. Some stretch directly toward the sun at its turning points, points that mark seasonal changes, from longer days to shorter ones and back again. This is not coincidence. This is memory etched in discipline, without words, without calendars as we know them, but with an acute sense of observation. The Nazca people built a rhythm into the land itself. The plateau became a calendar. Stars over the desert after sunset, the dark sky blossoms with stars. Constellations wheel in their slow arc, unseen by those who rarely left the desert floor. For the Nazca, certain star groups may have been guides, markers of time and space, trackers of seasons, companions to the lines below. The Milky Way stretches across the zenith like a river of light. The brightest stars slowly travel their nightly paths. Some align with specific directions of lines on the plateau. This was not casual. This was connection. The Nazca did not need to see the figures from above to know they were placed with intention. The sky was their witness. The equinox and the desert twice a year, the sun stands directly over the equator, neither north nor south, but balanced between them. These are the times we now call equinoxes. On those days, light moves evenly across the earth. Shadows shrink or stretch in symmetrical patterns. For an observer, these moments are calm, remarkable, and slow, like the breath of time itself. Some long lines on the plateau align with the equinox sunrise or sunset directions. They point toward the horizon where day and night meet in perfect balance. This suggests that the Nazca understood not mathematically, perhaps, but observationally that the sky and earth share cycles. They marked these connections in stone and sand. Seasonal patterns and water, always elusive, was the foundation of life here. Rain was rare. The sky was often clear. And yet clouds gathered in particular seasons, hinting at something deeper than sun and sand. The lines may have been part of those patterns, markers for the time when water would return. When the first clouds formed behind distant mountains, when breezes shifted direction, when the sky itself promised renewal. These are not moments of panic or fear. They are moments of awareness. The Nazca did not attempt to control the sky. They observed it, recorded it, and honored it. Why the sky matters viewed from above, the Nazca lines form a vast tapestry. Viewed from below, they remain hidden trails in sand and stone. Yet whether viewed from earth or from imagination, the connection between land and sky becomes clear. The Nazca lines are not mere drawings. They are relationships between people and land, between seasons and survival, between celestial rhythm and earthly persistence. These are markers of presence, calm, slow, and deliberate. They do not shout, they whisper. And in that whisper is an invitation. Watch, observe, learn, not with urgency, but with patience. Sunset above the desert, the sun now dips toward the horizon. Colors deepen, amber, then rose, then violet. The temperature falls, shadows stretch across the plateau. The lines become invisible again from the ground, melting back into the earth just as they always do at dusk. Above, stars emerge once more. The sky deepens. A soft wind moves through the stones. And beneath that sky, the Nazca Lines wait quietly, tracing geometry across the land, echoing the motion of the sun and stars, honoring cycles without clamoring for attention. Thus, as the light softened over earth and sky, the mystery of the desert remained not lost, but calmly preserved in silence and movement, in rhythm without haste, and in connection without demand. The fire has burned down to embers now. Its warmth lingers, gentle and steady, as if reluctant to leave. Above, the sky stretches wide and deep, the stars unmoving in their ancient patience. The Nazca Plateau rests far away in the darkness, but its quiet language does not end at the borders of Peru. For when we listen carefully, truly carefully, we begin to hear echoes. Not echoes of sound, but of intention. Across continents, across oceans, across millennia, other cultures once stood beneath open skies and felt the same questions stir within them. How do we speak to something greater than ourselves? And like the Nazca, many chose not words, but land. Lines that are not alone the Nazca Lines often feel singular, unmatched, impossible, yet they are part of a larger human pattern. Again and again, ancient peoples shaped the earth in ways that only fully reveal themselves through time, distance, or elevated perspective. They aligned stones with solstices. They raised mounds that mirrored stars. They carved symbols meant to last longer than memory. This was not coincidence. It was continuity. The chalk hills of England, far from the Peruvian desert in the rolling hills of southern England. Another form of earth drawing exists. White figures cut into chalk hillsides, horses, giants, abstract forms, visible from great distances, yet strangely incomplete up close. The Uffington white horse, carved more than 3,000 years ago, stretches along a hillside with flowing, stylized lines. Like the Nazca figures, it is not realistic. It is symbolic. Maintained for centuries by repeated clearing, it survived because people remembered not the artist, but the act. Here, too, the land became message. Stone and sky at Stonehenge in another place, stones rise instead of lines. At Stonehenge, massive pillars stand in quiet circles, aligned with the solstice sun. At dawn on the longest day of the year, light passes precisely through the stones, just as it has for thousands of years. The builders of Stonehenge left no written explanation. Yet their understanding of time, light, and celestial movement is undeniable. Like the Nazca, they embedded knowledge into the landscape itself, knowledge that did not require literacy, only observation. The Nazca and the global mind, what connects these distant places is not technology nor contact. It is perspective. Ancient cultures understood something we often forget. That meaning does not always need explanation. That repetition can be memory. That land can hold stories when voices fade. The Nazca Lines were not a singular miracle. They were part of a global language, spoken softly, written slowly, and meant to endure. Mounds that mirror the stars across North America, indigenous cultures raised earth mounds in precise shapes, animals, spirals, geometric forms. The Great Serpent Mound, winding across an Ohio hillside, mirrors celestial events and seasonal cycles. Its curves suggest motion, its placement intention. No walls, no roofs. Only earth shaped by hands that understood rhythm. Like the Nazca monkey's spiral tail, the serpent curves without beginning or end. Time flows through it. Desert messages elsewhere in Australia, Aboriginal songlines trace invisible paths across the land, routes remembered through story, movement, and sky orientation. In the Middle East, ancient desert kites, long stone alignments, stretch across arid plains, visible only from above, forming shapes that echo the Nazca's geometric certainty. In each case, the land itself becomes archive. Not a book, not a monument, but a living memory. Why Earth was chosen, why did so many ancient cultures choose land rather than stone tablets or walls? Because land lasts, wood rots, cloth fades, words change. But a line cut into desert stone, if placed carefully, can outlive civilizations. The Nazca may have understood this instinctively. They did not want their messages to be loud. They wanted them to remain. A shared silence, none of these sites announced their purpose clearly. Stonehenge does not explain itself. The White Horse does not speak. The Nazca Lines do not clarify their intent, and perhaps that is the point. These creations were not made to convince. They were made to coexist, with seasons, with sky, with memory. Returning to Nazca seen in this wider context, the Nazca Lines feel less isolated and more connected. They are part of a long human tradition of listening to the world and responding with patience. The Nazca did not build upward. They laid their understanding flat against the earth, trusting that time, not applause, would preserve it. The embers dim further now. The night deepens. The stars continue their slow arc overhead. Across the world, beneath different skies, ancient markings rest quietly, lines, stones, mounds, and paths, all holding the same calm truth, that humanity has always sought connection. And sometimes, the gentlest way to speak is to mark the ground and let the sky listen. Thus, as distant lands echoed one another across silent centuries, the mystery endured, not scattered, but shared, resting patiently beneath the unhurried movement of time. When you're ready, say, continue Part 6. Part 6 will explore theories without fear, ceremonial paths, water rituals, and why the Nazca Lines were likely meant to be the night air is still. A faint breeze moves across the plateau, barely disturbing the sand. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, mountains rest in shadow, holding the memory of water within their stone. Here on the open plain, the Nazca Lines lie quietly, not as images, but as experiences. To understand them, we must stop trying to solve them. Instead, we must imagine what it was like to walk them. The act of walking, as meaning many of the Nazca Lines, show signs of repeated foot traffic. The ground is compacted. Stones are smoothed. The paths feel worn not by erosion alone, but by intention. These were not marks meant only to be admired. They were roots. In many ancient cultures, walking itself was ritual. Movement created focus. Rhythm encouraged reflection. Each step became a form of participation rather than observation. To walk a line was to follow a story without words. Processions without spectacle, there is no evidence of grand viewing platforms or gathering crowds at Nazca. No amphitheaters. No towers. This suggests ceremonies that were quiet, personal, and repetitive, not performances, but practices. Small groups may have walked these paths slowly, perhaps during certain seasons, perhaps carrying offerings of food, textiles, or water. The experience would not have been dramatic. It would have been deliberate. Trapezoids as open invitations, the trapezoidal shapes. Some of the largest forms on the plateau widen gradually, as if welcoming movement inward. From ground level, they feel expansive rather than enclosing. Their edges guide, but do not confine. Walking into a trapezoid is different from walking along a line. The space opens, sound softens, the horizon shifts. These shapes may have functioned as gathering zones, places where walking slowed and attention turned upward. Water rituals in a dry land, the Nazca depended on water systems that ran unseen beneath the desert. Puquio's underground channels carried water from distant sources, sustaining life quietly and reliably. It is possible that lines and paths were aligned with these hidden flows, not to mark them physically, but to acknowledge their presence. Walking the lines may have been a way to honor what could not be seen. Water below, sky above, human presence in between. Repetition as prayer, unlike spoken prayers which fade, walked prayers leave marks. Each repetition deepens the path. Each return reinforces memory. Over time, the act becomes tradition. The Nazca Lines may have grown slowly, expanded, adjusted, respected as generations continued to walk, clear, and maintain them. Meaning was not fixed, it was practiced. No need for interpretation, one of the most peaceful possibilities is also the simplest. The Nazca Lines were not puzzles. They did not require decoding. They did not hide secret messages. They were experiences felt through movement, awareness, and seasonal repetition. Modern eyes search for answers because we encounter them from above, detached. But the Nazca encountered them from within. Silence as a design choice, the lines do not interrupt the desert. They do not rise, they do not shout. They remain level, calm, and respectful of the land's natural authority. This suggests a worldview grounded in humility. The Nazca did not attempt to dominate the landscape. They collaborated with it. Walking with the sky, imagine walking a long straight line at dawn. The sun rises slowly ahead. Your shadow stretches behind. Each step aligns with light, time, and breath. In such moments, explanation becomes unnecessary. Presence is enough. This may have been the purpose. When the path ends, many lines end abruptly, not at monuments, but in open desert. They stop because the walking stops. Not everything needs a destination. Sometimes the act itself completes the meaning. The night grows deeper now. Stars drift overhead. The desert cools. The paths remain, waiting for footsteps that no longer come, yet still holding the memory of those that once did. Thus, as the lines rested beneath the quiet sky, their purpose remained gentle and unresolved, not because it was lost, but because it was never meant to be claimed. It was meant to be walked and then left in peace. Morning returns once more. The desert awakens slowly, as it always has. Light spreads across the plateau, soft and even, revealing nothing unusual at first glance. The Nazca Lines remain hidden to those who walk among them, unchanged by centuries of sun and wind. But the world around them has changed. And in the early 20th century, humanity gained a new perspective. One that would gently and irreversibly alter the relationship between the lines and those who would come to study them. The first glimpse from the sky in the 1920s, airplanes began flying over southern Peru. Pilots scanning the desert below noticed something unexpected, shapes that did not belong to nature. Straight lines, curves, figures too precise to be accidental. From the air, the plateau transformed. What had always been a quiet landscape became a vast canvas. This was not a discovery made with celebration or urgency. It was a moment of recognition, a realization that the desert had been holding something patiently, waiting for a vantage point that would eventually arrive. The scholar who listened among those drawn to the mystery was Maria Reich, a mathematician and researcher who would devote much of her life to understanding and protecting the Nazca Lines. She did not arrive with certainty. She arrived with respect. For decades, she walked the desert, measuring, mapping, observing. She studied alignments, counted steps, watched shadows, often alone, often under the open sky. Her approach was careful and unhurried, mirroring the very qualities embedded in the lines themselves. Preservation over explanation, Reich believed that the lines held astronomical meaning. But more importantly, she believed they deserved protection. At a time when few understood their significance, she quietly advocated for their preservation, often personally clearing debris and warning visitors to tread lightly. She understood something essential. The mystery did not need to be solved to be valued. It needed to be respected. The modern eye, as aerial photography improved, the figures became clearer. Maps were drawn, catalogs compiled, names assigned. The hummingbird, the spider, the monkey, yet with each new image a paradox emerged. The more clearly we could see the lines, the less certain their purpose became. Clarity of image did not equal clarity of meaning. Tourism and stillness eventually, people came quietly at first, then in growing numbers. Observation towers were built, flights offered. The Nazca Lines became known. And yet standing above them, most visitors felt the same thing, not excitement, but calm. The figures did not overwhelm. They settled into awareness gently. This reaction mirrors the lines themselves, composed, patient, and unhurried. Modern theories, ancient calm theories multiplied. Astronomical calendars, water maps. Ceremonial pathways. Each offered insight, none demanded acceptance. What remained constant was the tone of the place. The desert did not react to speculation. It simply remained. Responsibility without ownership today, the Nazca Lines are protected, yet vulnerable. Footsteps matter, vehicles leave scars, time moves forward. Preservation has become a continuation of the original act. Careful, restrained, respectful. To protect the lines is not to freeze them in time, but to allow them to continue existing as they always have. Quietly. A shift in perspective. Modern humanity often seeks meaning through explanation, but the Nazca Lines offer a different lesson. They suggest that understanding can coexist with uncertainty. That mystery does not diminish value. That patience is a form of wisdom. The lines do not demand that we know why they exist. They ask only that we notice that they do. The sun climbs higher now. From the sky, the figures are visible once more. From the ground, they remain hidden just as they were when first made. The world has changed. The lines have not. Thus, as human eyes rose into the air and looked down upon the ancient earth, the Nazca Lines continued their quiet vigil, unchanged in purpose, untroubled by attention, and resting calmly within the long, steady passage of time. The desert remains unchanged. Wind passes over stone. Light drifts across sand. The lines endure. Yet far beyond the plateau, voices begin to rise. As the Nazca Lines entered public awareness, they did not arrive alone. They were followed by speculation, imaginative, enthusiastic, and often hurried. Where patience once guided interpretation, urgency began to intrude, not with malice, but with fascination. The human need to explain mystery has a peculiar effect on the human mind. When meaning is not immediately visible, imagination steps forward to fill the space, sometimes gently, sometimes loudly. The Nazca Lines, seen clearly only from above, seem to invite dramatic conclusions. They were large, they were precise, they were ancient, and so, for some, quiet explanations felt insufficient. Stories that flew too high ideas emerged that the lines were runways, signals, messages to distant observers. These stories spread quickly not because they were supported, but because they were vivid. They transformed patience into spectacle. Yet they overlooked something essential. The lines were never built for speed, never reinforced, never designed for weight. They are shallow, fragile, easily disturbed. They are not structures, they are gestures. The cost of sensational theories often say more about the present than the past. They reflect a modern belief that greatness must come from elsewhere, that ancient peoples could not achieve complexity without intervention. But the Nazca did not need outside guidance. They needed only observation, cooperation, and time. By attributing their work to distant forces, we risk erasing the quiet brilliance of human persistence. What archaeology actually shows: excavations reveal no sudden breaks in culture, no unexplained technologies, no foreign materials. The lines fit seamlessly into Nazca society, connected to their ceramics, their textiles, their water systems, their worldview. They were not anomalies, they were expressions. The danger of forgetting the ground when viewed only from the sky, the lines can seem otherworldly. But when walked carefully, respectfully, they feel human. Footpaths, cleared stones, gentle curves, they bear the marks of hands and feet, not machines. The danger of myth is not imagination itself, but detachment. When we forget the ground, we forget the people. Mystery without disbelief. To accept grounded explanations does not mean the Nazca lines lose their mystery. On the contrary, they become deeper. It is far more humbling to realize that a quiet society without metal tools or written language could shape the land with such enduring intention. Wonder does not require exaggeration. It requires attention. Returning to stillness as exaggerated stories rise and fall, the desert does not respond. The lines remain as they always have. They do not confirm, they do not deny, they wait. And in that waiting, they remind us that mystery is not something to conquer, but something to sit with. The sky darkens again. Stars appear indifferent to speculation. The plateau cools. The figures rest beneath the same constellations that watched their creation. Thus, as human imagination raced ahead and circled back upon itself, the Nazca lines remained grounded, calm, patient, and unchanged, holding their meaning not in noise, but in silence. The desert breathes. Not in sound, but in temperature, cooling as night deepens, warming again with the promise of dawn. This rhythm has continued long after the Nazca people themselves faded from the land. And yet something of them remains, not in stone walls, not in written words, but in lines, patient, deliberate, and calm. As we draw closer to the end of this journey, the question shifts gently. It is no longer what are the Nazca lines, but rather what do they teach us about how meaning was once lived. Memory without writing, the Nazca left no books, no inscriptions explaining their intent, no carved declarations meant to be read aloud. Instead, they practiced a different form of memory, one embedded in landscape. The lines may have functioned as a communal archive. Each path remembered a ritual. Each figure recalled a season. Each alignment preserved a relationship. Memory did not reside in minds alone. It lived in movement. Balance rather than control. Modern societies often seek to control nature, to predict, to dominate, to extract. The Nazca worldview appears gentler. They did not attempt to command the desert, they adapted to it. They observed its limits and shaped their lives accordingly. The lines reflect this philosophy. They do not disrupt water flow. They do not alter terrain dramatically. They sit lightly upon the earth. Balance was not enforced, it was practiced. Harmony with the unseen much of the Nazca world existed beyond sight. Underground water channels, seasonal winds, celestial movements. The lines may have served as acknowledgments of these unseen forces, a way of saying we are aware, we are listening. In this sense, the Nazca lines are less about communication outward and more about alignment inward. A culture orienting itself carefully within a larger system. The courage of slowness, perhaps the most radical aspect of the Nazca lines, is their pace. They were not rushed, they were not optimized, they took time. In a world that rewards speed, the lines remind us that endurance often belongs to what moves slowly. Their makers accepted that they might never see the full result. Meaning did not require completion. A different definition of achievement, no one signed their name. No one claimed ownership. The lines were collective, shaped by many hands across many years without hierarchy or display. This suggests a form of achievement defined not by recognition, but by continuity. The lines mattered because they lasted, not because they impressed. When meaning is lived, not explained, the Nazca lines may never yield a single, final explanation, and that may be their greatest lesson. Some truths are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be lived with. The Nazca did not leave behind answers. They left behind relationships between land and sky, between past and present, between humanity and patience. Standing at the threshold as dawn approaches once more, the desert prepares to shift. Light will return. Shadows will fade. The lines will disappear again from ground view. But their presence will remain subtle, steady, unchanged. We stand now at the edge of the journey, aware that one final reflection remains. Thus, as the quiet intelligence of the ancient world revealed itself not through proclamation but through presence, the Nazca lines rested calmly beneath the sky, not as riddles demanding resolution, but as memories asking only to be respected. The night has nearly passed. A faint light touches the horizon, not yet sunrise, but the promise of it. The stars begin their gentle retreat, one by one, yielding space to the returning day. The desert holds this moment carefully, as it has held so many before. Here, at the end of our journey, nothing rises dramatically. There is no final revelation, no sudden clarity, only stillness. And in that stillness, understanding finds its natural place. The desert after the makers are gone, the Nazca people no longer walk these paths. Their homes have softened back into the earth. Their voices have faded into the wind. And yet something of them remains, not as ruins, but as intention. The lines still stretch across the plateau. The figures still hold their form. The paths still remember footsteps. This is not survival by accident. It is survival by restraint. What the lines ask of us, the Nazca lines do not ask to be solved. They do not demand belief or explanation. They ask only for something quieter, attention, patience, respect. They remind us that meaning does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, not hidden but unhurried. Standing between earth and sky, imagine standing alone on the plateau at dawn. The air is cool. The ground is firm beneath your feet. The horizon glows softly. You cannot see the figures from here. You cannot trace the full geometry. And yet you know they are present. This is how the Nazca lived with their creations, not as observers above, but as participants within. They did not need to see everything to belong to it. A lesson written gently in a world that often seeks permanence through scale and force. The Nazca chose subtlety. They wrote messages that only time could reveal. They built paths meant to be walked, not displayed. They trusted that the land itself would remember, and it did. The enduring calm of unanswered questions centuries from now, the lines may still remain. They may be studied, they may be debated, they may be photographed from higher and higher skies, but their essence will not change. They will still rest quietly upon the earth, untroubled by interpretation. Mystery, when treated gently, does not disappear, it deepens. Leaving the plateau as the sun rises fully now, warmth returns to the desert. Light spreads evenly across the land, and once again the lines fade from view at ground level. They return to what they have always been, part of the earth, part of the sky, part of time. And as we turn away, carrying only memory and calm curiosity, the Nazca Plateau remains, not as a place of secrets withheld, but as a place of wisdom offered softly. Thus, the journey ends not with an answer, but with a feeling. A sense of connection across centuries, a respect for slowness, a quiet wonder that does not demand resolution. And so, as the echoes of the ancient world softened into the morning light, the Nazca Lines rested once more beneath the open sky, patient, enduring, and perfectly at peace within the long, unbroken passage of time.